So it was a perfect sun-kissed day. It was 2 weeks ago, and it was election day. And I hopped out of my car and went up to vote. There were lots of people coming and going, and there was like a nice big group of young people, diverse group, kind of handing out flyers. And there was like this real hopeful, kind of happy vibe, like everybody was on the same team. It was like school bond, yep. Ronald McDonald House, yep. You know, school board candidates, yep, yep, yep. And then as I kind of got closer to the door, this young man who reminded me of John Morant, who plays for the Memphis Grizzlies, who's just got this great face, like he's always looking like he's shooting from the half court and it's going to go in, and it does. He stopped me and he said, "Do you know how you're voting on the jail?" And I said, "You know, I'm not 100% sure. I'd planned to vote no because KC tenants and all the groups I support, all the progressive groups, everybody's voting no. But I'm just coming from my Torah study, and one of my friends who is with me at every rally and involved in the justice efforts, he voted no, and he was regretting it because thinking about how far away people who get jailed or sent from their home." I said, "I even called my son. He did a policy study about the need, the pros and cons of a jail in northern Florida, called him to ask him." And then the young man witnessed to me. I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, he had had a lot more experience in jail, and he knew a lot about how they take away resources from things that are so important, right? Like bus service. So while he was talking to me, I texted Alex, right? Because before Alex was a vice provost at UMKC and a dean at UMKC, he was a criminal justice professor at UMKC. So I'm asking him, and sure enough, he texted back, "Vote no. We got more beds than we need for the people who really should be incarcerated." So I voted no. Joe voted no. It passed, right? Good luck voting down a jail, even in Jackson County, progressive place, because for one thing, the ballot language is tricky, and for another thing, we live in a country that's all about jails and prisons, right? We got 5% of the world's people, and we've got 25% of the world's prisoners, right? I mean, our own prisons aren't brutal enough, right? So we got to send people to like brutal dictator countries where people can be imprisoned. All week, I've been thinking about that young man who looked like John Morant. And more, he looked like Jesus. I mean, I don't even think he believed in a world of prisons at all. We're like Jesus, right? Jesus in the Gospel of Luke is kind of a lot of craziness. I mean, it starts off Jesus inaugurating his ministry, good news to the poor, liberty to the captives, release to the prisoners. The whole gospel is like that. The whole gospel is kind of this crazy. It starts with the women, and the women, it starts with in the barren womb of Elizabeth. And then it ends up this old woman, we're supposed to believe that she has this baby, and then it ends in the tomb, right? This tomb that's empty. And then in between, there's Jesus who's announcing the good news to the poor and all that, and he's turning things upside down, and there's lost things that are found and relationships that are restored. And then there's, you know, this moment in which we come to the tomb, and in that story, the women are they come in the dark, early morning, and they have come after seeing this one arrested and crucified and laid in the tomb. They've come with their spices to anoint his body, but the body is gone. And they're perplexed, but then someone says to them, you know, "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" And then they're terrified. And then they run because he reminds them, you know, Jesus told you this is what's going to happen. And they run and tell the 11 and the others, but it seemed to them an idle tale. And the word in Greek is actually nonsense. It's ludicrous. It's hysterical. It's like what you say about women, right? You know, they're just, you can't believe them. And then Peter, "I'm going to build my church on this rock," Peter, he sees it and everybody believes him, right? Well, I kind of empathize with the women because I feel like my version is kind of nonsense too. Feels a little bit like that. And then I think, well, it's grounded in scripture. I've thought about it through the years. I've thought, you know what I need to do? I need to write my own version. I'm going to write my own children's book about the crucifixion and the resurrection. And it would start off something like this. Jesus was a teacher and a healer and a friend. And more than that, Jesus was God's love poured out on the earth. And there were some people, and their arms were wide open to that love. But then there were some people, and they were too afraid and hurt. They felt threatened. They didn't think there was enough love. And they told Jesus, "You better be quiet or we're going to hurt you." But Jesus couldn't stop because Jesus was God's love poured out on the earth. So they took Jesus and they hung him on a cross. And then you'd have a little sidebar because it's a children's book, right? And it could say, in Jesus' time, a cross was a common way to kill people. especially people who were poor or picked on or powerless. Jesus didn't want to die on a cross. Jesus wanted to end the cross. Can you imagine a world with no cross and no guns and no bombs? And if you wanted to see one, you'd have to go to the museum, and little kids would ask their parents, Mommy, Daddy, what was that, right? And then since it's kind of tricky, maybe you'd have another sidebar, like you could have a picture of Martin Luther King Jr., and you could say, other people followed, other people came after Jesus and also wanted to preach God's love poured out. Like Dr. King, he believed things needed to change. He didn't want to die and leave his family, but he couldn't stop speaking about the change. And so they shot him and killed him. And then you go back to the story, and it would be something like, so they hung Jesus on a cross, but something happened amazing on that cross. From the cross, Jesus kept pouring out God's love. And he said, we've got to forgive these people who have done this to me. And when Jesus was on the cross, just like he turned the world upside down, he turned the cross upside down. And if you turn the cross upside down, you couldn't hang anybody on it. And instead you'd have something that looked more like stilts, or maybe more like a pogo stick, right? Or maybe it could even be a shovel, or maybe you could even make a cello out of the cross. And then we see what God had done. God had taken the ugliest thing that we could create and made it into something beautiful. And then the story would go on. It would be like someone loved Jesus and they took his body and laid it in a tomb. And the women came to the tomb and his body was gone. No one saw what happened to it, but they could feel God's love still poured out on the earth. They felt that love so strong that some people saw Jesus and some people felt him. And some people, they felt that love every time they saw flowers coming up or heard the birds singing in the spring. God's love is still like that. It's still poured out on the earth. And now we keep pouring it out. That'd be the story. But then, at least one little hand would go up in the back and say, well, that's stupid. Because how come there's still so many wars? And how come people are still so mean? And how come people are so hurt? And I would have to stop and say, it sounds pretty crazy. We live in a pretty crazy time right now. If I had a dime for every time I've said that's crazy, really? The Gulf of Mexico is now the Gulf of America? I mean, it's not just crazy. I mean, I'll take crazy right now. I'll sign up for crazy. It's ugly, and it's gross, and it's cruel, and it's mean. And I could tell you so many pictures of that, right? We've seen it. We've seen those protein bars for the little children that have been stopped. The HIV medicines stopped. And worse, we've seen men with their heads shaved and shorn, shackled, and imprisoned, right? I mean, ugly. And so I think then I would have to stop and think, the book idea is not really going to work. And I would have to say to the little kids, I think the challenge is that resurrection, that big word that we use for God's love poured out in the world, it's a gift, but it's also work. It's also what we're called to do. It's also how we're supposed to live in this world where some crazy, ugly, hard things keep happening. And so maybe it wouldn't be a book so much. Maybe with the kids, since they've all been raised on, maybe they need to see a little film. Remember that film I talked about at the start of Lent about that photographer, Chris Jordan? He flew to that island in the middle of the Pacific. It was called Midway Island, and he filmed the albatross, these gorgeous, incredible, magnificent birds, and he filmed them soaring and hatching their eggs and dying with so much plastic in their stomach. And he went and he opened their bodies up so carefully, like the women who touched Jesus in the tomb. He opened their stomachs up and he photographed it. He made 8 trips to that island. And he said at the start, it was so overwhelming, the horror. He could hardly stand it. But then the more he went, the more he began to see the beauty and the magnificence and the incredible spiritual nature of these creatures. And then he said, after a while, the horror fell away to the beauty. The beauty became like the antidote to the horror. And the main event really became the beauty. And the plastic in their stomachs was just something stupid that you had to try to deal with. So maybe I could show that to the kids and say, What could we do with that plastic? Is there a way we could get rid of it? I could show them a picture of an island a friend shared with me once. It wasn't the Easter Island, but it was an island that had been made of plastic, recycled trash, like 100,000 bottles knit together. This man had made a beach and a house, and someone else had made an island, these scientists up in Montana, that you could put into a river and a stream. You could raise lettuce and tomatoes and green beans and wildflowers, and the roots from the plastic would actually lift the toxins out. It sounds crazy. It sounds like nonsense. It sounds like taking the ugliest thing that we could do and making it into something beautiful. Resurrection. And then, since kids are kids, and they'd have more questions, and they'd want more examples, I could get our little peace photo album out, right? And I could open it up and I could point to some of us. I could start off with me. Say, once I had the ugliest time in my life. So ugly, almost died, right? And look at this beautiful place. Look at this incredibly beautiful thing that's come from it. Maybe I could show them the picture of Jimmy and Jaminda and Isaac Holmes. Sad thing is their son Micah, the 19-year-old, died last year. He's not here. It was so difficult, right? The way the cancer just took over this young man, the start of his life, just so brutal. And the stuff we didn't see, that his parents just, the horrible way it ate at his life. But the beautiful way they just cared for him and loved him. And our own Ed Brennan, right? How he lost his Charlene of so many decades last year. And how that disease just took away. And Ed was there every single day in the nursing home with her at 3:45, carrying her and loving her. Maybe I could show other people in the directory too, people who are still in the midst of a really tough time, people who've got kids who are separating and their own cancers and their own things they're facing. And then maybe I could say to the kids, some days it doesn't feel like shouting, Christ the Lord is risen. Some days it feels like right now, more like a prayer, more like something you say when you're going down to the rally, holding a sign. Love is stronger than hate. We'll survive. We'll make it. We're better than this. It feels like a prayer. Christ is risen. That you say, maybe at school, right? Where someone's coming after one of your friends or one of your kids or calling them a name, and you wrap yourself in that, a prayer, so that we can try to face the ugly like the women did and bring something beautiful out of it. Some days you want to shout. Some days you want to pray. Some days you want to face this world and look at how we can keep being God's love poured out in the world. May that be our prayer. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Amen.